What is going on, guys? Welcome back, and let's make a battle board. So, in the words of a very wise wizard,
prepare for battle!
Oh, I hope it's orcs.
Juan. Are these boards just big cinematic grabs for YouTube? Are they playable? Are they easy to build? Are they financially viable? Well, that depends on how much you get paid. If you can afford to buy some Warhammer, you can afford to build one of these, clearly. It took me a little bit of time to build up the funds. I slowly bought bits. I bought a load of scenery one month, and then I bought the wood another month, and then I bought all the little greeblies that was going to go on it another month, and then some of the terrain I tried to 3D print, and that all went wrong. So then I ended up buying 3D printed terrain to go onto this, and using some old terrain from my previous time, from the before times, the beginning of my Warhammer experience back in 2002. This was a lot to think about, and if you're going to build a board like this, you need to be prepared for a few home truths. And the first one is, they are not easy to build. I borrowed a friend's garage to build this in. You needed way more space than what I have. I mean, I'm not exactly swimming in space where I am. And you need to sort of be committed to the build as well. You need to sort of realise that if you're going to run out of something, you need to be prepared to put your hand in your pocket and go, right, well, I guess I need to go buy that. So let's go through this build process, see what I've learnt, see what I didn't learn. Maybe I accidentally skimmed through some really difficult bits and struggled on some of the easier parts. Who knows? I'm pretty good at falling up the stairs, not down them. So, yeah, it all starts with the wood. And let's go from there. The wood, an idea, a bit of imagination, chef's kiss, boil it all together, don't stick it in the oven. And let's have a look at what I've made with the help of a friend. It's definitely the most epic diorama I think I've ever built. One thing is, if I draw this, pin this here, and then it should shift when I go to draw that in. If you can count it like this.
Nice.
Cool. Right, that's this bit locked in.
Boom. Is that decked?
That's how the battery dying.
Yeah. Your batteries there.
Yeah. So now we've pretty much got our platform built, and it just needs a bit of tweaking. So we want to get rid of that seam that is cutting through the middle of our build. We just don't want that there. We're gonna be able to get rid of it later anyway, but let's make life easy now and stop having a wibbly wobbly bit just getting in the way of everything. So I'm just gonna use some leftover bits of wood to tie this down, and then we'll screw through, and that will hold that nicely in place. And another thing that I'm thinking about for this board is, well, we're going to be adding electrics, so extension lead. I'm going to drill some holes. Boop. Out the side of your battle board, my battle board, phone chargers. Why not? I want to be able to charge my phone whilst playing. I don't want it to be all the way over there. If I have some electrics available to me, I want to be able to check my rules on my phone and immediately go, ha! Says here I get 40 dice. And they all hit on 2. No. You didn't bring a phone charger. I did. So you're going to have to trust me there, bro. So I can clearly cheat and win every battle I will ever play. And we're also going to be adding a water feature, which we're going to be needing electrics for. So water and electrics. Yes, what could go wrong? What could go wrong? Hopefully nothing. But this is a rig miniatures build. Who knows? We could have some shocking results by the end of this. But until then. And then we get to do my favourite part with any build. And you know I get excited about the terraforming, the building of the terrain. Whoa, what is it going to look like? Is it a verdant, lovely looking world? Did the destruction happen 100, 200 years ago? Beginning of the Crusade? 10,000 years ago. I'm going through the audiobooks at the moment, so it was only 200 years ago in my mind right now. 10,200 years, whatever. How long ago did the battle happen? Because... Wait. What is this? What is it? I've sort of mentioned it. I've brought it up momentarily, but I haven't really spoken about it because I just watched this whole video back through and realised that I haven't mentioned it. I've sort of glossed over. So this is the water feature. It is a water vaporizer that I've just put into a Tupperware container that is suspended sort of just underneath the board. And then on top, I'm putting these vehicles. I'm putting a tank from the Age of Darkness box, from my Istvan 5 diorama, and I'm also going to be putting the drop pod there as well to look like it's just come smashing out of orbit right into the side of this tank, and it is still smoking away. The sheer velocity of it is maybe caused a new engine fire, reignited some old Promethean fuel or something along those lines, just to give this board a bit of vibrancy and bring it to life a little bit whilst playing. I would suggest fully varnished models to play on this board with that activated, which is what I have done for all my models anyway, and I've put a lot of varnish around this area as well after finishing, just to try and stop it from going mouldy or anything like that in the future. But those are problems for another time. So anyway, we'll have a quick look at how this looks, and then actually the effect shows up better once this is all completed. So once you see my ad later, and then after the ad during the story portion, where you see all the glamour shots, you'll see it there, and muy bien. Looks great. Looks fantastic. Longevity though, I'll put it in the comments below. How long do you reckon this will last? That depends on, they could be ruins, but then grass could be growing back, flowers could be back, bushes, vines could be overtaking it. Did it happen last week? Is it still freshly scorched earth? What is the terror looking like? Is it malformed? Is there a hill? Is there shell craters? All these things that need to be thought about, processed, and also the building placement, because I don't want this to be unplayable. Just, here's a load of stuff. Okay, now we can't play on it because everything's in the way. You know, I want to be able to put more scatter terrain down on it if I want more terrain in the way. I want buildings to fit in to other parts that haven't been done, so we can change it up a little bit without it. So it would be obviously a static board, it would always be that, but then we can add bits to it. We can take bits potentially away from it. You know, is that an advantage point? Not anymore. Building it. Things like that. So there's lots of thought process going into this next part of, right, we're going to put a hill on one side to raise it up a little bit so we can have different buildings here, and we can have that as quite clearly a separate part of this build. And also we can then dig down to add a crater, because it's gonna, I've now realized I've got a hard wooden bottom, it's going to be hard to dig into, and that's where we're going to be putting our water feature as well, as you've seen, with some rescued parts from an Istvan massacre diorama build that I did. It was massive, it had to come apart, but I've saved on to these parts. So it's getting a bit of channel history in there. So that there's also another build that I did a long time ago. That's going on there. So we're getting there. It's looking tasty. So now we are still working on our terrain, but this is where it really starts to take shape and come to life. And oh yes, I love it. Love it, love it, love it. So what I'm doing here is I'm placing down a modeling compound, and I'm also adding some more features in. I've got some 3D printed tank traps. I've got copious amounts of dead bodies that need to be distributed across this board because, well, if there's no one around to bury them, I suppose they're just gonna have to sit there, aren't they? So within all that modelling compound, we just need to finish up some placement of our little greeblies and dead bodies, barricades and whatnot, and work it into that modelling compound. Next, we're going to be using Smart Mud, which is what this lovely brown stuff is. It is phenomenal. If you've seen some of my other videos, you would have seen me use it before, and you'll know how much I really enjoy using this stuff. I didn't realise a whole pot would cover this entire board. 10 quid well spent, I say. So then we've got to get it spray painted up and ready for painting and ready to make it come to life. Now, at this scale, spray paints are my best friend, and that is what I'm going to have to use to sort of get this all primed and then work out where all my textures are going and where my mudded paths are going to be. I'm using a sort of an ochre colour, and I am going to mix up some ochre paint for when I'm adding the flocking and basing material. I'm going to use the paint as sort of like a glue to lock this all down with, so that I don't have to use copious amounts of glue. It just, you know what, the paint's going to dry, it's going to lock it in anyway. I mixed a bit of PVA glue in with this paint mixture anyway. So yeah, we sort of try to hit two birds, one stone with getting the basing materials down. And my god, it was upsetting going through the amount of bags that I did, but you know, needs must, and this board looks all the better for it. These stuff from Geek Games Scenics is just phenomenal. It is just beauty in a bag. If normal is magic, you know, magic in a bottle, these are beauty in a bag. Absolutely love their flocking stuff. Not sponsored, just game respects game, you know? And to make sure that this doesn't go anywhere, I'm just spraying it and absolutely soaking this entire board in matte scenic glue. You can just use watered down PVA in a spray bottle. I've bought the purpose stuff because, as I said earlier, I was just buying stuff at this point. And now we've got another vastly endless and relentless task of putting washes all over our buildings and some of the terrain and rusting everything up to make it look like these centuries of war have been happening. Now, while I just finish up with a final high brush, this is the 5th time I'm leaving the word high brush. It's a high brush now, not a dry brush. And obviously, as we do with all our models, put the black paint around the rim. We need to paint the rims. So while that's going on, if you guys could just consider just a couple of things for me quickly. 1, hitting the like button, leaving a comment, sharing this with friends. I'm sure if you've enjoyed it, you know someone else will enjoy it. And if you could just watch this one little thing, and then I will give you the glamour shots, and you can hear the story of the lore that I've used to build this build. While that's going on, let me tell you about Merlin Miniatures. Now, if you follow my link below, it is an affiliate link, so I get a little kickback if you follow my link below. Why would you follow it? They have a massive range of paints, notably Dark Star and Two Fin coats, which they've got really good deals on at the moment. A massive range of miniatures, everything from the new stuff right back to the classics. So if you want to get yourself on some of those old out of production models like I usually do, which is how I found these guys, then go give them a look. They're really active on social media, and with every purchase, I get a little kickback and you earn loyalty points to go toward your next purchase. And also, feeling a little skint this month? Don't want to play with your army anymore? Haven't played with an army for a long time? Why don't you get some money from them by selling to them? That's right, not only can you spend your money there, you can make some money there to go towards that army that you truly want. Check out Merlin Miniatures today and follow my link below. The shattered ruins of Vardis Spire stretched out below the high ridge where the Krieg snipers made their egress into the outer city. Grelin 4, formerly a temperate agri-world before the wars came, that had reduced it to a war-torn wasteland over centuries of relentless conflict. Vardis Spire, once the planet's capital, now a desolate ghost of its former self, a place where hope and life struggle against the grim shadow of war. From their vantage point in a bombed out building overlooking the ruins, the Krieg snipers waited. Clad in their weathered grey coats and rebreathers, they were as silent as the city itself. The team's leader, known as Sergeant 0143, scanned the horizon with his magnoculars, while his squad maintained their overwatch. Each had their own task. None spoke a word. Vardis Spire's central spires and administratum buildings had once reached high into the skies, a testament to the Imperial Order and their ability to build and dominate. Now it lay shattered, its peaks sheared off by orbital strikes. Broken hab blocks surrounded the spire's remains like a sea of jagged teeth, like the deep, hungry maw of the snarling monster that war breeds. Their walls pockmarked by gunfire and plasma burn, drowned in tanks and wrecked drop pods dotted across the streets, like the remnants of a long-forgotten storm of steel that had yet to wash away. Yet, amidst the desolation, something stirred. Through the Krieg team's scopes, patches of grass could be seen pushing through the rubble. Blades of grass sprouted in the cracks of Thurocrete streets, and the hardy weeds clung stubbornly to the edges of shattered walls. In places where the sun's light filtered through the smoke and ash, tiny flowers had begun to bloom. They were small signs, fragile and fleeting, like another force trying to lay claim to the city. Fauna was doing its best to return to Vardis, to the flat plains it had once been. Forests that ran for miles, clawing and clinging to the seats of mountains, opening up into rolling hills of moorland before entering the southern steppes and on to the desert dust bowls. But of course this was all before the colonies of Old Night landed their ships and claimed a new home. Sergeant 0143 shook his head. He felt no joy at the sight. To him, the greenery was a distraction, a brief anomaly that would be crushed beneath another wave of conflict. He focused instead on the ruined streets, where shadows danced and moved amongst the rubble. Through his scope, Sergeant 0143 spotted figures creeping through the wreckage. Cultists, clad in scavenged armour and marked with crude chaos sigils. They emerged from the hollowed shells of had blocks. They moved cautiously, their eyes darting towards the skyline. These heretics, had they survived the last purge of Vardis Spire, scavenging the city's remains for weapons, supplies, food, or even dark relics? 0143 whispered into his Vox link.
Target. Priorities identified. Check horseback.
His voice muffled by his rebreather. His team acknowledged with a series of clicks. One by one, the Krieg snipers adjusted their positions, their long las rifles modified for a maximum range and lethality. They shifted towards the cultists, looking through their scopes. 0143 could see the details of their faces. Scarred, twisted by years of devotion to chaos, he placed his reticle over the lead cultist, a man wearing a rusted Imperial Guard breastplate, now faced and defiled with the 8-pointed star. 0143's eyes burned with hatred as he let out a small yet silent growl.
Kill the heretics.
Like a cool breeze, the grass flowed like a stone skimmed on water. Then the searing heat burnt it to ash. The silence was broken by the faint hum of a lasround, motionless yet impossibly fast. As it soared through the air, the lead cultist fell without a sound, his skull suddenly exploding with a clean, precise shot. As the body crumpled to the floor, the others noticed, started to scatter and dive for cover behind rubble and the husks of burnt-out vehicles. The Krieg snipers picked them off one by one, their firing rhythm methodical, unhurried, clinical. A heretic scrabbled towards an overturned chimera, but another shot rang out, and he slumped to the ground like a marionette with his strings suddenly cut. A woman with a jagged blade tried to flee into the shadows of a collapsed hab block, but a lasround caught her mid-stride in the back of her head, causing her to tumble, twitch, and be still. Within moments, the squad of cultists lay dead, their bodies sprawled across the fragile greenery, struggling to reclaim the city soaked in this viscous slurry of splintered bone, entrails and blood, nourishing the ground below. As the last shot echoed through the ruins, the Kriegsmen returned to their watchful silence. Sergeant 0143 observed the aftermath through his scope. Blood soaked the dirt and smeared the fragile plants. Tiny flowers that had once peeked through the cracks in the furrowcrete were now trampled beneath the weight of bodies. But the grass would regrow, it always did, and every time war would return to Varda's spire and tear it down again. For centuries, this cycle had repeated itself, an endless struggle between destruction and resilience. As Sergeant 0143 lowered his scope, his gaze lingered on a patch of grass near the body of the lead cultist. Even as the sniper team repositioned and the city fell silent once more, he noticed that the green still stood tall, reaching for the sun despite the bloodshed all around. He turned his back and walked towards his squad, gesturing for them to move to a new perch. They would stay in the shadows, silent, watchful, until the next threat emerged. For the death core of Krieg, Varda's Spire was not a place of hope or rebirth. It was simply another battlefield where the ash of war would continue to bury the green, because what makes the grass grow? Blood. Blood. Blood.